And with that, we'll talk about planning for 2024. So this is the news that most people are seeing when they think about starting a job today. And this is probably where the poll is coming from, right? Layoffs are going up, at least in the short term. There's a lot of companies announcing layoffs. There's a lot of confusion about what sorts of layoffs are actually taking place. And this is scary, right? And so I just want to emphasize that there is good news. If you actually look at the deeper employment numbers, or the deeper unemployment numbers, as the case may be, employment is rising in professional, scientific, and technical services. Number one, there is still a lot of demand. If you look at the longer term trends and patterns here, which we've talked about in the last few webinars, data science, AI, ML are all things that every employer is talking about hiring in the next 12, 24, 36 months. So even though right now you might feel a little stressed out, know that you're on the right path. And if you were to make any sort of decision, which industry to focus on, data, AI, ML, this is a good place to be right now. One of the things that is also coming up a lot is companies are doing both hiring and layoffs at the same time. And well, I would say this is actually a bit unique for this period, compared to other periods, and just important to know that. The main reason that this is actually happening is that companies are actually a lot more active in reskilling and repurposing their workforce than in the past. They're expecting that productivity will go up because of this AI powered future that we keep hearing about. And so what's very common right now, in fact, is that companies are laying off certain teams that they think will become more productive because of AI, i.e., they'll need fewer people, and they're focused on AI oriented hiring instead. So that means actual data, AI, ML folks. Again, lots of demand there, but it also means hiring people who have upskilled themselves or reskilled themselves in some way to use AI powered tools to be better at the jobs that they're applying for. And so, as a side note, one thing that's very, very important right now, as you're going through the process of looking for a role, potentially emphasize how you can use those AI powered tools to be more productive, to push the company forward in new and unique ways. As a case in point, we see articles like this all the time, tech companies axing jobs to pivot into AI. Really, this important piece around pivoting to AI is what you should be looking for. A few other things that are really important that are starting now from a trends perspective that I expect certainly to continue in the next few years and well into the 2030s. Again, AI skills are permeating existing job postings. So one of the questions that just came up is specifically around how do we know if layoffs are related to non-AI roles. One is, of course, press coverage, but the second is look at the job postings that they do have. Now, if they have no job postings, then of course, they're probably not hiring. The layoffs are probably just more general ones. But what the job postings will probably be talking about is experience with, ChatGPT or Gemini, Claude, things like that. Or if you're looking at data AI roles specifically, they might be talking about new technologies that go beyond simply software engineering or coding in Python. A few other things that companies are really concerned about that, again, if you're starting your career now, you might want to double down on. Productization of AI. It's really easy to have a good demo with generative AI. It's really hard to scale that up. So most companies have these wonderful demos and pilot programs, and like 90% of the companies will say that they have something like this. And then very few companies are actually taking that and scaling it to their entire workforce. Related to that is AI transformations. How do you actually consult in this process? AI policy guidance, regulatory fears. How do companies actually address some of the challenges that governments are having as well? And the last thing to know as well is, very few companies are actually building Gen AI models themselves. Many are using large language models, foundation models, things like that, but very few are actually building them from scratch. So depending on how you're framing yourself, or if you're overwhelmed by, the latest and greatest LLM publications or foundation model publications, know that simply knowing how to use these things, how to evaluate them is a huge opportunity as well. Other things to keep in mind for you specifically, avoiding AI demos that simply use Gen AI APIs. This is something I'm noticing particularly over the last 6 months. People are applying for roles and they show really cool demos, but all they're doing is using the REST APIs with OpenAI or Claude or Google, the Google Cloud platform. And so you're not really telling me you know anything about AI. You simply know that you can call a REST API. Similarly, avoid skill spam. It's very common for people to post a lot of different skills on their resumes. Focus on quality over quantity, focus on unique skills and expertise. And finally, a few things that have come up in the one-on-ones themselves over the last few weeks. Remember that all your experience makes you a well-rounded and interesting person. Oftentimes people are worried about international experience versus Canadian experience, or maybe jobs they've had that aren't relevant to AI and ML. As someone who's worked in customer analytics, one of the things I absolutely loved doing was hiring data scientists who had retail experience, even if they were just working in customer service or something like that, because at least they knew what the reality on the ground was. So remember, tell your story, tell it proudly. That's very, very important. Other details, tactics like 1 or 2 pages, the resume flow, that's all important. We can cover that. But really, if you're telling a good story, remember this, if you're telling a good story, you're going to be fine. And of course, consistently build your network. Another thing, particularly as you start your career, I find a lot of people get their job, they stop networking. And as a result, their network becomes weaker and weaker over time because they don't support the people that they've met and they know. If you were to meet 2 new people every day per working day, you'd be growing your network by roughly 500 people a year. Remember that. It's very easy to do, very quick, and very, very powerful. I won't go through all of this, but if you're interested in all of this content, the webinar we ran around getting ahead and staying ahead covers a lot of it in detail. So please feel free to check that out. It's all available on YouTube.